The economic benefits and costs of immigration. We're going to get down to the reality of it because we're going to talk today about remittances. Remittances, that's the money that people who are here illegally and legally send back to the home country, never to return. We're going to talk today with Matt O'Brien, FAIR's Director of Research. I'm Dan Stein, President of FAIR, and thanks for joining in to this Facebook premiere. We'll be glad to see your comments under this as you participate, if you will, and we will read all your comments as we look through it. And you'll be glad to know that we get all your feedback. But let's take a look at this whole question of remittances. When people come here from other countries, they tend to send home a portion of their earnings. Some of their earnings get sent out of the country. So when an American citizen is working, he or she gets paid. Most of the money they spend back in the local economy, pump it back into the local economy. But people who are here from other countries working, foreign workers, people here illegally, illegal aliens, when they work, a lot of the money they send goes back to the home country. Talk about the consequences of that for our economy and what our crack research team found out when they took a look at the most recent data about remittances. Matt O'Brien, tell us, what did your study find?
We found that about $150 billion is going out of the U.S. economy annually.
$150 billion, $150 billion, just leaving the country.
$150 billion goes abroad, and this is money which is sent to friends, family, or business associates in foreign countries, and it goes out of the United States without any tax being levied on it by any governmental authority except the state of Oklahoma.
So contrast that with an American citizen working here who gets paid. What do they do with their money?
They take their money and they spend it in the local economy where it's subjected to consumption taxes, excise taxes. Unlike income tax, these are taxes that you are paying to the government when you buy things. So restaurant taxes. Right? Exactly. That money is typically used to fund schools, roads, jails, other types of infrastructure that are necessary to the community.
And in the end as well, when they purchase food and other things that are actually grown here, it goes back into the pockets of producers, right?
That's correct. Money is like water. It tends to flow. And if you keep it in the United States, it flows within the U.S.
All right, so let's say we have somebody working here illegally from, say, Guatemala. Hypothetical, Guatemala. Or they send their money back to some friends back in Guatemala. What happens to that money?
Well, that money goes into the Guatemalan economy and is taxed by the Guatemalan government. So what it winds up doing is driving the economy back there. Now, there are a number of problems with that. It's not money that's being earned locally. It's just being injected into the economy. So that can encourage people not to work, not to innovate. It can create imbalances in the local economy that actually drive prices up and cause inflation. None of those things are good for the countries that are receiving this money, but it's an easy source of cash, so the foreign countries all like it.
Well, the argument is made that these foreign governments depend on this money coming back as a form of foreign aid. Is it an effective form of foreign aid?
It's not an effective form. What it does is it tends to suppress economic activity in those countries, because why do you want to open a business if you can get free money and live comfortably off of that money? It takes a special entrepreneurial type of person in that situation to invest that money in the local economy.
So if this is happening, then why is the use of foreign workers so highly sought after?
Well, because a lot of foreign workers in the United States will work for lower wages than people in the United States are willing to work for, and it allows employers to artificially depress wages for the entire workforce, not just the foreign workers.
So they undercut American workers, and they're sending money out of the country.
They're sending money out of the
country.
country.
And who benefits employers?
It benefits employers. The biggest problem is that newly arrived immigrants in particular, but also people who have been here for some time, particularly at the low-wage, low-skill end of the economy, tend to be dependent upon benefits. And these benefits are typically funded by these consumption taxes that are generated by money circulating in the economy. So you have people who are not paying for things like housing and medical care and things of that nature, and then the small amount of money that they do earn, they're sending the bulk of that in a lot of cases outside of the U.S. economy.
All right, so if they go back so if you take the money back to Guatemala, we're talking about, and they buy they buy a Samsung, they buy a VCR player, right? Okay, DVD player, they buy something like that. Does that help the U.S. economy?
Very indirectly, if at all. The problem is that a lot of those things may be made by American companies, but they're made by foreign affiliates, and that money goes through several layers of taxation in foreign countries before it comes back to the United States. So that's a problem. When the money stays local, what happens is state, county, and municipal governments tax that to pay for the services that they provide for all of us: buses, subways, roads without potholes, things of that nature.
Okay, well, are there other findings in your study you want to share?
Yeah, as I started to say, we don't tax this here in the United States, with one exception. Oklahoma levies a very small tax of about 1.5%, which keeps a significant amount of money in the economy in Oklahoma. It was actually about triple the budget for their public schools.
How can this be? Oklahoma is grabbing this tax money. Why not New York City? Why not New York State?
I think a lot of it has to do with just the sort of politically correct notion that somehow problems in these countries were caused by the U.S. and that we owe people this money.
But these blue states, they love taxes. They have all these shortfalls in their tax revenue. Why wouldn't California want to claw back some of those remittance monies?
Because it's not the politically correct group of people to tax. These are the supposed victims of income inequality, not the capitalist benefiters from income inequality. But the fact is, if you take a look at this, that's not really true. These remittances come across the economic spectrum. So you may have a brain surgeon from India that's supporting an extended family in India, and that may only be a small portion of his income, but it's still disposable income that's not being spent in the United States and generating the revenue that pays for the services that we all use on a daily basis.
Okay, any other findings?
Well, we found that if a small tax was levied on this of roughly 1 to 1.5%, based on the 2017 figures, that could have kept about $1.5 billion in the U.S. economy just from taxing these outgoing remittances.
So how significant is this to the average American?
It's pretty significant because that's a huge amount of money going out of the U.S. economy, and if you look at the remittances that come into the United States, they're in the millions, not the billions. So the money that is remitted from Americans living abroad is a very small percentage of this whole kind of trade imbalance in currency. And the fact that we incrementally pay for portions of the services that we use by pennies on the dollar, like an 8% restaurant tax, that hits the average person, very minimally. But when you multiply this by the number of foreigners who are currently in the U.S. workforce and the amount of things that they are not buying in the U.S. economy, it winds up being a huge amount of money, and that cost has to be borne by someone. So it's your average American worker who is paying higher tax rates in order to make up for this stuff because it's not being spread around.
So a country should do its own work. You can find a copy of this report on our website at www.fairus, that's FAIRUS.org. Get your hands on a copy of FAIR's new remittances report. Arm yourself with the data you need to make a difference. Matt, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.